trucking, gonna stand up. Rep the Midwest, get it hype. This the ramp up. Hey, the ramp up. Never hit the brakes. Break it down day to day. Show the people what it takes. The ramp up, the ramp up.
Welcome to the third episode of the Ramp Up. We are seasoned podcasters now, quote unquote. We've got a couple under our belt and feeling a little more comfortable. But today we're talking about culture and training and the people that we tried to bring in and how we went about that. But hey, man, two under our belt. How are you feeling the first couple went?
I feel all right. I feel like the interview with green screens was a lot easier. So it's just I'm really interested and wanted to ask a lot of questions.
Yeah, the conversational was definitely fit us a little bit better, I think. I will admit, like the first one, listening back, a little clunky out of the gate. We were trying to find like your voice, but I think we dove into some good stuff and our reasoning for why we'd want to do this and gave some good context. But
I gotta say, real quick, I don't like listening to my own voice, so I gotta get used to that. I just something about it. Talking to my wife about that too, and she's like, "I hate my voice." I'm like, "Your voice is fine. I don't think mine is very good. I mean, I can't sing or shit, so I'm pretty sure listening to me is not that appealing either."
Yeah, I think we're our own harshest critic. But the second one I thought was a lot better, like you said. Green Screens is great, good partner, and had some really fun conversation with them. So. But yeah, on to today. I mean, we're on our third one. This one is the second step. Once we decided to make that, it was like, okay, now we need to build a team. The idea was kind of already made, and we talked about what we wanted to do with cross-border and our backgrounds, but culture was a big piece.
Yeah. We really obviously got to know each other and strengths, weaknesses, talked about that in the first episode. And then it was like, okay, what do we want Hoplite to be? What are our pillars? So how did you think about like that when we started talking about that process and our pillars? Like, what was your response, initial thought to what we wanted Hoplite to be?
Yeah, I think we wanted it to be in credit to you, because we were doing a lot of exercises that you were bringing to the table to like, okay, how do we outline the ethos, the pillars of this company, like what we want to be from a people standpoint. And I think the exercise we did was we kind of laid out all the attributes of a company and what we valued, and like then you and I both ranked them, and we said, okay, let's see which ones are ranked the highest collectively. And it worked out really funny because we said, like, you don't necessarily want to be like a cliche when it comes to that stuff, but the top ones we came up with were growth. We wanted an environment where people feel like there's growth opportunity and people are further in their careers. Responsiveness, that's a big one for me. Like anytime a customer sends over a quote, I want to reply right away, acknowledging it, and then saying, we'll get back to and then an actual price within 15 minutes. Like that's really important. I think it sets the right expectations right away. You're like, oh man, this company's like really on it. So the responsiveness, and then with carriers too, when they have an issue, knowing that they're being taken care of. So you had that one really high too. And then integrity, I think that just goes hand in hand with anything you're trying to do. You want to be thought as a company that does things the right way. And when no one's looking, your employees embody that too. And then the last thing was like teamwork. I know we said like the team is like a Michigan quote, but like that everywhere I've ever been, if you have a really strong team, that puts out a really strong product. And
yeah,
and those four things, I remember us laughing when we saw like the acronym that could create. Like as Lions fans, we're like, dude, it spells grit. Like if that wasn't more perfect, I don't know what was, but that's become. I know everyone else is using it too, but that's become like our internal mantra.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the integrity piece is important. Obviously, it's kind of a broad word when you look at the definition. A lot of things encompass what integrity is, but something that you and I talked about, which was, I think, frustrating in some of the last stops, were people not taking accountability for other people's work on their team or the company and saying like, oh, I could help you with this, but I'm not going to, which that kind of always pissed me off. And I loved being a part of a team. Shout out to Bison Transport when I worked there for a little bit. That was like, it was incredible how many people were willing to step in and help you with something. And they were all working, cross-pollinating to get these these milestones achieved, which I thought was super cool. But within that also, I think it's just not having shitty people. And what I mean by that is people that are just not nice to others or getting so stressed out about the job. So maybe you shouldn't be in carrier sales or customer sales if you're this if you're this confrontational about these situations and these things. Like, it's end of the day, it's just freight. Obviously it's a tough industry to be in, but I mean, you got to be nice to your coworkers. You got to work as a team, and I don't want to hire anybody that is going to create a really bad relationship when you're working at odds from a carrier rep over to like a customer ops or customer sales reps. They're going to butt heads because they're supporting different, in our model anyway, they're supporting different people, right? And looking after a customer versus a carrier, you're going to butt heads about things. But if you do that in the right way and you're amicable with each other and respect each other, then you shouldn't have these big issues. And I just hated, I don't know if you feel the same way, but I just hated seeing that from some of our last stops.
Oh, it's the worst. I remember walking in, like every stop I've been there to a degree. There's always like a little animosity because most of the time they haven't sat in the other person's seat. So they don't realize how much each person is trying to do. And that misunderstanding just generates all these replies that are just so unprofessional to a degree. And yeah, I think we both wanted to make sure that this wasn't an environment that was conducive to that. But I will say that we hired experienced people only out of the gate for a few reasons. And obviously you want to say, okay, you can let them take the wheel and like the car's not going to go off the road because they already know what they're doing to a degree. But logistics is a stressful ass industry. There's so much shit in a brokerage that's out of your control. Like, we're not driving the truck. You're not setting the appointments, like mistakes are made. And I can speak for myself. When I was a younger rep, man, I'd get fired up. And I know some of the people, if anyone's listening to this from my early days at Coyote, like, yeah, I used to be a little fiery. And it's like, you have to slowly figure out that you can only control what you can control. And some of that just comes with time. So, I think us hiring some experienced reps who have already gone through a lot of these scenarios, one, made like the product stronger, but also made our culture better because no one's really flying off the handle too much. And that was by design.
Did you feel like it was difficult to, I guess, push our new hires towards a new culture in terms of maybe tearing down old habits and building new ones? Or do you think like a lot of the foundation that they had built, especially most, what if you come from Coyote, they kind of already had that, and that's kind of what we're trying to do anyway?
I think it's a little bit of both. Like, I haven't seen like a ton of bad habits, I think, with our current team. Like, shout out to them. They're the hardest working team I know. Like, we go above and beyond, and that's awesome. But I think some of it just comes from like, you still want to grow them. You still want to give them the little tricks that we've learned along the way. And everyone on the team's super open to that, which is great. But yeah, I mean, everyone's going to have their little habits and everyone's going to have a bad day. But I think we've built a culture that is, people get the bad blood out and then move on to the next thing. And I think that's a good place to start for a startup. Not that we have accomplished a ton, but we're growing every month, and that's a great place to start as well.
What are some of the things with culture you think you need to duplicate in terms of like practice, like something that you need to do every day or every week so that you can kind of support that culture? Something that's like, again, might just be a habit you're building or a process you have, whether it's you doing it or getting your team to do it.
Well, I think two things. One is like regular touch points. I know we were going to talk about, how you build a culture in a remote atmosphere. Now, we have an office in Mexico, and our reps go in down there, which is great. I miss being in an office. I'll say that. That interaction every day, face to face, like really builds things up quicker. But our employees are spread out across the U.S., so regular touch points is important. Like, you and I have, 3 huddles with the teams, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then we have department specific meetings once a week. And getting everyone involved and on the call together, I think, is really important, and it helps with that. And the other thing is just understanding where they want to take their careers too, and they feel like they have that growth opportunity as we grow. Then that's a great place too to kind of get everyone involved and okay with working maybe a little extra hours, maybe doing things a little outside of the scope of their direct role, because they know it'll pay off.
I think COVID potentially taught us a little bit about managing remotely, which is, I think, a blessing because it's difficult, right? I mean, I think it's pretty difficult. I think it's still today is difficult. It's just hard to know what exactly somebody's doing or what are some areas that we need to focus on to improve them that falls in line with like the culture that we're building. Now, luckily, we do have a lot of really experienced reps, so it's not bad, but you see things like creep in and it can be difficult to kind of pick that out when you're remote.
I'd say some areas where we are falling short is like maybe we don't have the structure the amount of structure that is ideal at this stage, but we're working on that every day. But like, that's something that we can do a better job of, especially with the remote environment. Like when something comes up, do we have SOPs in place? We don't have all of them, and we're just a smaller company and we're working through that. But that's probably something that we could do a better job of that we're not doing right now. And, credit to the people we have on the team. Everyone just kind of rolls with it and gives their input, and we start to build processes as we go. I mean, I heard people say this a few times, but you're building the plane as you fly it. And that's definitely what we're doing, not only from the culture standpoint, where I think the plane is mostly built, but processes and things like, we're missing some landing gear and things like that right now.
Yeah, I got to give you props though, for doing a great job with early on when we weren't even, I mean, just deciding to have like a call every day at 10 a.m. Between me and you, like a founders meeting. And we've been doing that for a year and a half, I think, which is crazy, even well before we launched. And then some of the, obviously the meetings we do in the morning, the huddles, and just being very consistent with your messaging. And it's very supportive of who we are and what we're trying to do. And giving a clear roadmap. I think like the things that you talk about with the team and things we need to work on, it's all comes back to our pillars, man, and supporting that, which is huge. And you do an awesome job at being like that field marshal and kind of keeping everyone in line and making sure they understand. Because at the end of the day, it's like the actions and the things that they do are representative of the culture that we're building.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, I think we won to it pretty well, man. Like, I think both of us bring things to the table that need to be addressed and give everyone an open forum to make suggestions and comment. And I hope that's the environment we're creating anyways. But I know everyone's been very open to giving feedback, and that's made us a stronger team. And I think too, like I read something a while ago, just with like, now most of the people in our company are near our age. So it's not necessarily like a younger group, but some of them are a little younger. And I know I feel the same way. People will work harder and towards a goal if they understand the why, especially the younger generation. Like, you want to know why you're doing something. Why do we have to make these changes? And if you're very transparent, and I think both of us have been, like, we give the team like insight into the financials, where we stand, how cash flow is looking, why we're making decisions, the decisions that we're making, what we want to do with next steps when we have the money to do that. How we're going to make them more successful and more efficient when we have the opportunity to, like, we let them know so they can view the future like we view it. Like, when things are clicking, this is what it's going to look like. And I think if you're very open about that and people understand why they're working long hours or why they have to push a little harder, all of us, people will do that because they see what the outcome could potentially be.
Yeah. And kind of along that same thread, I really like that we decided to do in-person onboarding with everybody. So we hired anyone. Obviously, we're fully remote in the US. So when we hired someone in the US, we go to where they are. Initially, we met in Chicago with our first 3 that we brought on, and then did like an in-person onboarding kind of session and just getting to know them better if I didn't really know them, or vice versa. If there was someone that you brought on versus I did, I think that was really helpful, especially in Mexico, going down there and doing in person, and us traveling down there quite a bit. I do feel bad for our US employees sometimes because we are heading down to Mexico and they have that office group there. And it's just, we're trying to be smart with the money we have as we as we kind of grow and being like a startup. And I'd love to have an office in the US and have everyone come out here all the time, but we just can't, we can't do it. And other founders we've talked to have said, I've given that advice and been like, don't get a US office if you don't have to until that time is right. I think we're doing an okay job with that.
Yeah. I mean, it's prioritizing what a need versus a want has been a tough thing for us because both of us want results like tomorrow. I could say one of my biggest weaknesses, it's a lack of patience sometimes. And I want it to be successful tomorrow. And I want, it's like some of these bids and customers, you got to put in like a year or two before you even get an opportunity. And I'm like, man, this is tough. That's tough for someone like me.
I got to be honest. I thought I was really impatient and I met you.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
There's certain levels to it for sure. Like I'm very patient with people. Outcomes, maybe not so much. And yeah, we want that office really bad. I have home offices in my two locations right now. For those unaware, I'm in the process of moving to Grand Rapids, Michigan. I've been in Chicago for like 14 years. And so I have offices in both, but when you're working, 15 feet from where you sleep, it's you don't get that separation. And I do miss that. And I will say the office down in Mexico, I always love going in. I love the team. I love the energy, and I can't wait to replicate that in the States. But like you said, one step at a time. So we're getting there.
We are.
All right. The next thing I guess we should talk into is how we went about the hiring process. Like with carrier sales, that was my background for a while. So it was a little bit easier to bring those experienced reps in. Like I had a lot of people that I have close relationships with. And also like the way the hiring market was, like people were looking for a new opportunity in that regard. A lot of the companies were scaling back, changing comp structures. And so that was easy for us to hire in to a degree. We had people that we really trusted and we're in a good place there. But with the customer side, I think we had to get a little creative. I know that's more of your realm, but maybe you want to talk a little bit about how we went into that.
Yeah. Again, when I tapped into my network, I noticed that a lot of the guys I'm either friends with or knew pretty well had either moved down into leadership roles. They moved out of logistics and do something else, or they were just really expensive, man, like enterprise size sellers that, for them to move, it'd be really difficult. And that just wasn't in our budget. So I think we had to kind of pivot a little bit and look towards what are the traits and personalities for a customer sales rep that we need, and how do we go about finding that. So that was like an adventure for both of us to explore. And we had to start asking around and diving in and, getting to know some people.
Yeah, that was a little unsettling because most people when they want to start a brokerage are like, well, you bring someone in who already has a book like to build off of.
Yeah.
We didn't necessarily do that. I agree with you. When you start looking at sellers who have this massive book of business, though, they require normally a sizable paycheck to start in order to make that move. And we didn't have that luxury. So I think we had to get a little creative. And I know our first hire on the customer side was someone who didn't even come from a customer background, and no problem giving him props. Our guy, Rob Conrad's been an actual stud for us, but he came from a carrier background.
I mean, you were the one that came to me and like, listen, I didn't know Rob that well. We obviously go way back from Coyote days and Traffic Tech, but we didn't really have much crossover. I didn't know him like you. And you're like, this guy's a stud. Knows the reefer market better than anybody out there. I think he could do an awesome job if we focus him more on like reefer accounts. And he's just so knowledgeable and is well-spoken. And I was like, all right, man, I trust you. And I trust this. Like, he's like, just get to know him some more. So we met, and I was like, he is awesome. I can see it. And I remember him saying like, oh, I don't know how to sell to the customer side. It's like, well, I think you do. You just don't. It's just like curating a pitch and taking that knowledge you have and knowing how to curate the right way, but also just being a good listener and knowing how to ask the right questions. If you can do that, then you can get a long way in the prospecting and sales process, and you just want to get your foot in the door. And after that, it's cake.
Yeah. Well, also he was like one of the better leaders I've been involved with, because he was in management too prior to making the jump. And just been a killer for us and made that transition pretty seamlessly. So that was a good start for us.
I was going to say, and then like we think about shifting down towards Mexico. We want to cross border, be a big part of what we're doing. And so venturing into that, I do want to talk about like the decision of why Guadalajara. I think that's a given, knowing my background. So I was one of the first people to help open up the office for Coyote in Guadalajara. And that just exploded. And you look at the talent down there now. And you and I talked about Monterey for a little bit. And we're like, oh, this is such an important place for manufacturing. But I don't know anyone there. You don't know anyone there. It's like, we can start in Guadalajara. Then if we want to expand later, we can. But we know that there's talent. We know that there's people that comes from Coyote there that have branched out as well. And there's like Arrives down there, CH is down there, Echo's down there. You've got Danny Roberto and the Rapido network as well that we're really close with. Yeah. So that was kind of a given, I think, in terms of where we wanted to set up our shop down there and start hunting for talent.
Yeah. And I mean, that was my first time going down there when we went to look at a potential office, and man, that blew me away. Like, Guadalajara's a beautiful city, great food, good people. Like, it's
fantastic food.
But great decision for us. I guess it's like a long-winded way of just saying you got to look at the person instead of necessarily the role or their background. And I think we did a great job by identifying really good people who fit what we're trying to do, even if they don't necessarily have like that huge book of business from day one.
Mm-hmm.
You trust that. My thing, I guess, always is if I'm going to hire someone, I want, we'll talk about this at the end with our top attributes, but you want to be around people that you want to be around. If I like being around them, then I know a customer will. You want that like charisma or just that specific something that people enjoy them talking, like hanging out with them. If that works for me, then typically that's going to work universally. And on the carrier side, yeah, just our initial hire was Ryan Servos, someone I've known for like 10 years, and just a great dude, and he's been a rock for us on that side. So really good team. We got off the ground. I think those are kind of our initial hires. And now I said on the first one, we're up to 10, hopefully growing here again soon. But those initial hires are just so important. And I think for the most part, we nailed them. A few mistakes along the way in terms of like how we looked at the business structure, but we can get into that on future pods. But, before we get into top attributes we were looking for, is there anything else you wanted to discuss on the hiring and culture front?
Yeah. So one other thing on the hiring front, I wanted to ask you, I think it's easier when you know someone came from like a Coyote and you kind of know how they were built, so to speak, especially if they're there a while. So, there's like a culture fit. What are some of the things that you look at specifically if someone didn't come from Coyote and you're just unsure even about the company's culture, where they're at?
Yeah, I mean, I think people who aren't from the company are probably like, these guys just keep bringing that up. But I think it's human nature to feel like a comfort when someone comes from the same type of training or background that you came from, because you know what you went through and you know the training they got. There's a lot of other brokers out there who do an amazing job of training. I mean, you talked about Arrive. They've built great culture, and they do a great job with that. I mean, there's Flock, CH, Coyote was a huge one, obviously. You got your TQLs and all these other companies that are huge that have a ton of talent because they're so large. And a lot of the time people are looking for an opportunity to further their career, and they can't necessarily do it there. You and I both ran into that where we hit our ceilings at different stops, and you want to afford someone the opportunity. So I guess, if they don't come from there, you got to do a little more. Let's say you're doing due diligence on all of them, but you definitely need to dive in a little more. If there's anyone that we knew mutually, I would reach out and ask them like, hey, what's your thoughts on this person? You got to take that with a grain of salt, but if it's someone you know and trust, that's always helpful. And then just diving in really deeply into their results, their portfolio, asking them questions that maybe aren't the same question, but border on some of the same things to see if the results are consistent. And the interview process is tricky. I started taking a more active approach in that when I got to Traffic Tech. At Coyote, they had an HR department, and they were just like, here's 3 new reps, you train them up. And they did a great job. A lot of them were people that fit, the mindset that you want. But I made a lot of mistakes looking at the person only and not necessarily background training, mindset in previous stops. And I want to make sure that didn't happen here. I think you're never going to hit on all of them. But what were you looking at when we were going through that process?
Yeah. I feel like this is an area that when we talked about our strengths and weaknesses, this is an area that is definitely not one of my best strengths is the interviewing process. I think I've gotten better at it, but I haven't had to do it a ton. So I think that's where you've come in and really helped. And I've learned from you on that regard. I'm like so focused on asking my own questions and making sure I'm asking the right questions that I should be a better active listener and looking for the little things. I think you're good at picking that out. Asking about personal life, I think, is big. It's like you don't want to, everyone's different. They have different hobbies, different things are important to them. But it seems like there's some insight you can gain from learning a little bit about a person's personal life and some of those questions about what they like to do, what's important to them, or all that kind of stuff.
Well, it helps you figure out what makes them tick. And ultimately, you like everyone's little idiosyncrasies, like what's different about them. Like that's fun. That's like people, like little things like that. But you also want people that are somewhat similarly wired, especially in startup culture where, there's going to be long hours and you're going to have to do some things again that fall outside your job description sometimes until you can build a team large enough and get enough structure to really hone in on one task at hand. So yeah, it's been tricky, but I thought we've done a good job. And I think it's a pretty good segue into, our big ranking of the week. It's our top 3 attributes we feel like are important when looking to hire. And there's a lot, we talked about, I think we came up with a list of like 17 or 18 when we were going through that exercise.
Yeah.
We were trying to define our pillars, but for me personally, like what are the things that I'm like, they got to have these 3, otherwise they're not a fit, and vice versa with you. So I'll let you kick it off.
All right. My number 3 would be someone who's considerate. And I think considerate could be, you could also throw a lot of words in with that and what it means, but thinking about like others and being there for others and just being considerate of, I think it's a perspective of having some empathy, but it's also the action of it too. Is when you're considerate, you're also doing something about it, and so you're helping somebody or helping someone finish something, or just taking into consideration what someone might have to do. I think that's an important attribute that somebody should have.
Yeah, no, I agree. It really shows too. You want to have a good teammate, so I agree with that. My number 3 is drive. I really want someone where it's like they have high goals. Sometimes the goals might even seem like if your goals don't make someone say like that's ridiculous, then you probably don't have goals that are high enough. Like you should be aiming for the moon, man. Like that's what life's all about. You get one shot at it. So I love the people that have a drive where they're just like, this is what I want to do. Like I'm willing to do whatever I need to do to get there. And like that can set, as long as have the integrity to go with that and they're doing things the right way, or they're just a hard worker, like you can build a team around that any day. So drive is my 3rd for sure.
And I think within that, real quick, what I've learned lately over the last year or so, and kind of whether it's like my wife or some of the past job I had at Bison and other places, like you find people, and I talked to others about this too, but you find people that their drive is, and they have this position, and like they're really happy at that position. Like they do something really well, and they maybe don't want to be a manager or move up or do this, and that's okay. And I think understanding that some people are like that. You're in a big city and there's a lot of people that want to continue moving up the ladder and climbing and getting these jobs and that, but also there's people at those same companies in the cities that are just like really happy and good at what they do, and they have drive for that. So I think it's important to understand there's different kinds of drive.
Yeah, I agree. You just want somebody who wants to be the best at whatever role they choose they want to do. Yeah. And they're willing to keep improving. So self-improvement, I think, is part of that too.
Yeah.
My number 2, we'll snake it around here. My number 2, could say like charisma, but what I really mean by it is like it's like an intangible. It's like their aura. Like, it's a funny thing to say, but like I mentioned it earlier, if you're around someone, you're just like, there's something about this that is like, they have a magnetism that you want to be around them. You want to hear more. They make things fun. You just want to work with that person. Like there's, like I said, some intangible effect to that. But if you can there are people out there, and I think we have a few of them at the company, but if you just want to be around them more, your customers, your carriers are going to feel that same way. And they have like those type of factors that just further the business just because they're just the way they are. And there's a certain like things you can pick up on that through an interview where you're just like, man, I really enjoyed that interview. That person was the man or the woman. And I love that conversation. I want more. And that's the type of person I like to go out and hire.
As the kids say, they've got the Riz.
We're going to have to cut that, dude.
Come on, man.
Yeah, that aura, man. That's my two.
Yeah, that's a good one. I talked about this before, but accountability. I talk about accountability a lot because it's being accountable for your work and then the work of others. And that's something that's ingrained in my brain. I just think it's so important. Having somebody that is going to step in and help somebody else or help get the job done and not think about, oh, well, I did this, what's in it for me? Or I should get a cookie or a pat in the back because I did this. And it's like, no, you're doing it because that's the right thing to do. And that's what the company needs right now. The team players often have a lot of accountability. I think it goes beyond your own, and it's accountability for the team and the company.
Yep. That's going to border on my number one, but what's your number one that you look for?
Determination. Having someone who's determined. So that could be hard work. It could be like resilience could be thrown in there, but just being really determined to get the job done and grind through. We all know brokerage, like you have to be willing to grind it out. You're going to have really bad days, really low lows and really high highs. When it rains, it pours, and with problems, it seems like in brokerage. So you really have someone determined to fight through that, get the job done. What about yours? What's your number one?
I think our top two are similar in the same vein. Because resilience is a great one, but I think determination is close to like similar to drive, which was my number two. Like they're going to do what it takes to get it done, despite how many no's they hear. But my number one is similar to your number two to a degree is reliability. Like if they hold themselves accountable, they're also likely very reliable. And like you want to be able to put someone in a role and you don't have to worry about that anymore. They're doing the right things that you can give them a task and they're gonna do what needs to be done to get it done. They're very reliable. And if you don't have reliable people in your organization, like I think you're set up for failure because you need to be able to step away and grow the business at times. And especially when you're smaller and you don't have as many people in the bunker with you, you got to trust that the people you do have are setting the right example, doing the right things, and ultimately taking care of the business when you're away for a minute. So reliability is like my number one.
It's a great one.
Thanks.
Good.
Yeah, I mean these are really good ones. I'm sure a lot of people look at it similar. There's a ton of attributes out there that you could bring into this mix, but I think those are 6 very strong ones, and I think we've done a good job of following through on that with our hires so far. So, well, good deal. That's episode 3 of the ramp up. We'll have a pretty special spotlight regarding culture and training and hiring for episode 4. But hope to see you guys in the next one. And make sure if there's anything you want us to cover or any thoughts you have, we love the conversation. Let us know. But we'll see you guys in the next one.